Wow.
The voice of Florida. Your voice is our choice with Dr. Karen Green.
Wow, c'est choix nous.
Tu voz es nuestra elección.
Ta voix, c'est notre choix.
The voice of Florida.
La voz de la Florida.
Your voice is our choice with Dr. Karen Green.
Good morning, blessings, and welcome to another week of The Voice of Florida, where your voice is your choice. This morning, we want to take a moment to recognize all of the veterans across this nation, those who have served, those who are serving, and we just want to just thank you all for your dedication and duty for securing and protecting our great nation. Today's show is really going to feature not many, but most of our dedicated veterans in the state of Florida. It's amazing that this community has so many veterans, and many of which we don't know. However, this morning we have the blessing and the benefit of having some distinguished guests who served in our military. And today, first and foremost, let me welcome the president of the Florida Democratic Caucus's Veteran Caucus, my dear brother, Danny Briscoe. Are you here, brother?
Well, good morning, Dr. Green. It is an honor to be here this morning.
I want to thank you for not only your service, but for your dedication for all these years. I know we'll talk a little more about your work, what you've done, and the work you continue to do. With full disclosure, Danny is a good friend of mine. I've had the opportunity of serving with him in different capacities. But let me just say this, as a civil servant, as a protective servant, as a man of faith, one who has stood in his own realm, but continues to lead in his capacity. Danny, thank you and welcome to the Voice of Florida, where your voice is our choice, and this is your home for always voicing your opinions. Thank you
so much.
Thank you. Danny, tell us a little about yourself. I mean, I know you've served in the military for almost 3 decades. I know from your distinguished, elaborate bio and what I know as my own personal reference is that you not only continue to lead in your capacity, but you're also a mentor. You have opened so many doors to so many young minds in the state. And we're going to have a discussion today with your leading in this discussion. Danny, tell us a little more about yourself. Tell us what's going on in your world. How are you?
Well, thank you. So again, good morning, everyone. And again, thank you, Dr. Green, for having me here this morning to just share with you on this very special day that we all pause to celebrate and give honors to our military veterans. And before I go any further, I just want to say Happy Veterans Day to all of my comrades, my sisters and brothers who served in arms, and to those who are still serving. A little bit about me. Again, I'm Danny Briscoe, a retired veteran of 29 years as a Sergeant First Class. I retired in 2013, and I did serve a tour of duty in Baghdad, Iraq. My role was finance and also logistics. Well, what I'm doing now is continuing to serve in my community in the state of Florida, in my county, in my city. You know, I am bored. I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything if I'm not out there every day trying to serve somebody. What's dear to my heart is my elderly, the youth, and the people who wants to be helped. I am the president of the Democratic Veterans Caucus of Florida. I serve with honor and with pride because we are advocating for our veterans, trying to make sure that they get what they so deserve: affordable housing, health care, education, and those who are still dealing with trying to get their veterans benefits. And you know, we are very limited because we can't go out there in the name of the Democratic Party, but we could go out there in the name of I'm here to help.
Yes,
my comrades. And
yes.
What can I do? And we also support those who wants to run in political office.
Okay.
We endorse them and we support them.
Well, Danny, most of what you've just touched on are some of the things we're going to be discussing on today's program. You know, the state of Florida has almost, I think it's 1.2 million plus veterans living here, with approximately 200,000. That's 200,000 of that number are women. And then 1.2, somewhere around a little over there of the men in our state. Now, you touched on some of the issues that I'm familiar with, that recognizing that veterans are not just veterans, but veterans are also their families, right? Right. And the dedication and the sacrifice made by all of those who serve and their families. So we're going to be looking at some of the issues you just browsed on, where I know as a fact, based on the statistics and the study and the research I've done in my own capacity, is that we still have within the state of Florida issues that are so damning almost to people who have served. I looked and I realized that one of the highest concerns and issues is suicide within our veterans space. I also realized too that there is the housing crisis, that the numbers I'm showing is that almost 3,000 veterans in the state of Florida are homeless.
That is correct.
I also know that there is my research tells me during the time when we were looking at the PAC Act, that thanks to President Joe Biden, this was introduced for veterans, people who were exposed to the toxins. And with this, there was approximately, I think it was over, the numbers were 7 point something million, a lot of money was issued to protect this for the PAC Act. I also am aware, Danny, that before we bring on the other guests, we have 2 more minutes in this segment before we go to break. But let me just also ask you, Danny, you're in Volusia County in the Midwest, in the midsection of Florida, Central Florida almost, on the coast.
Yes.
What does homelessness look like, and folks coming back with people being traumatized? Because we also know 10% of the people who served come back with post-traumatic stress disorder.
That is correct.
How is Central Florida with these statistics? What does it look like in Central Florida to you? The state of homelessness, the effects of mental illness.
Okay, so Dr. Green, thank you so much for bringing that part up, because let me say this. The most disappointing issue that we're dealing with here in Central Florida, and I must say all over the state of Florida, is that they passed this new bill that our homeless cannot encamp in any public place. And so what is hurting us at the core of our heart is that they have not put in place for our homeless veterans. Our veterans are walking the streets every day dealing with PTSD. The program, there are programs in place, but we got to make sure that our local government is doing everything that they need to do, is to go out there and to make sure that they have a place to put our displaced homeless veterans that's dealing with mental illness, medical issues. And let me say this PAC Act is the best thing that our president passed, because it is important that those programs and the money is available, but our local government, I don't think they're doing all that they need to do is to make sure that we are policing in a good way our homeless veterans, putting them in a safe place, is to make sure that they have the care that they so deserve and they need.
Danny, thank you. As we go into commercial for first break, we're going to continue on this topic after the commercial break. But this is something we want to discuss today on a day when we're celebrating, honoring those who have protected this great nation here and abroad. Thank you so much, Danny. We'll wait to move to the next section. This, again, is our first segment where we have the president of the Florida Democratic State Veterans Caucus, who was led in so many capacities. So much more to talk about, Danny, when we get back from the break.
Thank you.
Nigeria has launched a significant $1.8 billion investment in Grenada's hydrocarbon resources, partnering with the Global Petroleum Group through its own OceanGate Oil and Gas Engineering. This partnership aims to capitalize on Grenada's unexplored hydrocarbon potential, possibly leading to the Caribbean's first commercial oil and gas production. Nigeria's interest in Grenada is part of its broad strategy to diversify its refined products market. The venture could eventually expand to an $8 billion investment, depending on exploration outcomes and production feasibility. This initiative aligns with Nigeria's aim to expand its influence in international energy markets while fostering economic ties with Caribbean nations. The project also offers Grenada a promising economic boost through infrastructure investment and job creation. The 38-year agreement with the Grenadian government allows for shared production in an offshore area about 7,000 square kilometers, promoting growth in Grenada's energy sector. Previous efforts by GPG, especially around the Nutmeg 2 well, hint at untapped reserves that OceanGate's involvement could further uncover and commercialize. With regional competition from established players like Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada's successful venture could inspire other Caribbean islands to explore their own energy resources, contributing to energy independence and reduce imports. For Nigeria, this partnership holds both economic and geopolitical value as it extends its energy influence beyond Africa.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean. More than a ferry service, it's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel. Our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
The voice of Florida. Your voice is our choice with Dr. Karen Green.
Wow, c'est choix nous.
Tu voz es nuestra.
Good morning, blessings, and welcome back to the second segment of The Voice of Florida, where we're here on this program, Your Voice is Our Choice. I am so honored and humbled to be welcoming on our show this morning 5 veterans. Is it four of you this morning? I'm counting myself as a true battle fighter. but this morning I'm thanking you all in your own capacities here in the state of Florida. You literally make up that number of almost 1.3 million veterans in the state of Florida. And today, on behalf of our viewing audience and my family, my friends, I want to personally thank you for your service, your dedication, and protecting this great nation of these United States. Thank you. Thank you so much. On the call this morning, we have wow, I'm just so blessed. Gerda Remy happens to be the one of the only female we have this morning serving in her capacity, one of the almost 200,000 people here as a veteran in the state of Florida. Thank you, Gertie, for all you do, having served in the health field in her capacity, still continuing to do her civic duty and responsibility. Gertie, thank you. I'm going to go through each of you in order I call you, right? John Perry, my big brother. I am just so blessed to have, this is the strength of these veterans. They never stop fighting in our communities to uphold the decency, the legacy that we have. John Perry, thank you. John Perry has served in the military as well. We'll all talk about you individually. But John Perry also on the Space Coast worked at NASA in his capacity. John, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to your families for your dedication as well. Our brother, Professor Paul Vasquez, is literally in the state of Georgia right now, having done the footwork again in a battalion form of trying to secure freedom. Thank you again, my brother, Paul. And so we'll be going around just introducing yourselves before we get into the real nitty-gritty of the issues that I know veterans are facing. President Danny just told us of what he knows some of the challenges are. But Gertie, talk to us. Welcome. Tell us about you in 1 minute. Tell us of the work you've done, my sister. Tell us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. It is such an honor. Like every time you ask for us to do anything, I am so welcome to do it because of all that you do in our community. And all of the members here, especially our president, Danny, I appreciate you all being here. Wow, as a veteran, I was in the U.S. Army. My MOS was 91 Quebec and 91 Bravo, which is a combat medic and a pharmacy tech. After leaving, I became a nurse. So I still do that in this capacity. Right now, I work at the local detox hospital in Eatonville. We deal with substance, abuse people and the situation that they have due to unfortunate circumstances. And this is really in line to what's going on with our veterans because a lot of our population are veterans. I also do respiratory nursing at a nursing facility in DeLand, in which we also deal with veteran patients. I feel like whether I'm working in nursing or I'm working in activism around, veterans are always like people who we meet. Like we are veterans who we meet within our environment. And I was listening to if I can continue, or are we just introducing each other?
We're going to introduce you, but give us that minute. Tell us what it is that's on your mind, because sometimes, we got to honor you today. Whatever comes to mind, it's your stage, your voice. Go ahead.
Thank you. What I was listening to as Danny was talking about the new law that passed. You see, because in my capacity, I always think of law, activism, and healthcare with veterans. And that law is very detrimental to our people. It's detrimental to people who are not veterans, but yet alone those who are, because we go and we say, thank you for your service. But then we pass laws that says, hey, if you are unhoused in the street, like you can be arrested. And the reason why that's important, because then they come to our detox hospital. Not really because of the substance, but because now they're unhoused and they know that And so as an admission nurse, of course, I cannot turn people away, but it's not fair that they feel like the only option, that our veteran who served our country, that the only option is to go into a facility so they're not unhoused. So shame on people who make that law, and shame on us who are not helping as much. But for those who are, just keep up the fight. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
My sister, I know you're in the battleground. I see you every day and the work you do. And thank you again for stepping up to even run for office for the civic responsibility. We're going to move over to Brother John before we move over to our Brother Paul, who's currently in Georgia. John Perry, talk to me. Tell me what you served and just where you are in this process.
Well, I thank you very much, my sister. Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here to tell the story and to share some of the plights of the veterans. Last Saturday night, I had the opportunity of attending several functions. I chose to do the one that honored vets. It wasn't overwhelming as far as the numbers that were there, but the numbers that were there represented who and where I served. Quite a few diverse individuals from different services and everything. And the community of Kissimmee the city of Kissimmee honored those veterans. It was so funny. After the event, I went down to the local BFW, which was predominantly white, and I noticed that there were flyers, very colorful flyers with all the information about honoring these vets, and none of them attended really. So there was a bit of disappointment there. I came here to the United States I came here in 1968. I don't even know how many years that is. I went to high school, had a very good high school career, met my present wife, my only wife there, true sweethearts and everything like that. We've been together now 52 years.
God bless
This
you.
country gives me a lot. Instead of taking scholarships, I chose to go into the armed services, Air Force, as a way of paying back. I served 5 years. I feel myself so very blessed to be here in these United States, even through these tenuous times that we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say to some people also, take a break, take a sabbatical, get away from the pond that you're swimming in right now. The Bible talks about it quite often. It talks about going into your closet and staying there for a while. Complete silence. I had the chance just a few weeks ago to get away out of this pond that I've been in, and I've been understanding now that I've been swimming in the wrong pond. I'm an eagle, I'm not a duck. I should be soaring, I should not be standing still. And that goes along with all of us that are here today. We are survivors. As Bob Marley says, we are survivors. We're here for a purpose, and we got to perpetrate that purpose. Not all of us are survivors, trust me. Sister Karen, I got to tell you that you yourself, you exemplify what I live every day.
Oh, Jesus.
You're the catalyst to what I do.
Thank you, Lord.
You talk quite often, and you do so much. Not from a profiteering standpoint or whatever, but from a community standpoint. And I personally want to thank you and invest you as a veteran, okay? It's those that are served in the service or whatever. It's EMTs, it's nurses, it's police officers. We are so fortunate. Freedom is not free.
Wow.
Not free.
Thank you, Brother John. And I humbly receive that. Let me also express to you that I was honored last year by the States Veterans Caucus with that honorary award. And I want to thank you as well for recognizing me for my service, President Danny. Thank you again. Our brother Paul Vasquez, who, as we all know, is a friend of this program. He's a professor and one who is always involved in political advancement and advisory. And the interesting thing is I'll allow him to tell you what he did in the service as well. Welcome again, Paul. I know you're foot soldiering, returning from the state of Georgia, having done your part in this democracy. Please, welcome.
Hey, Karen.
Only. Hey, Paul, talk to me.
Hey, can you hear me, Karen?
We can. Welcome again to the show.
Hey, thanks. So it's kind of ironic. So I'm in my hometown of Brunswick, Georgia, which is actually where I enlisted in the Army. So that's actually kind of an interesting coincidence given the topic you're talking about today. But yeah, just to give your audience some background. So I enlisted in the Army in 1991 and served from 1991 to 95. I was an Army intelligence analyst. And one of the things that's kind of interesting, I guess, about my service is my first duty assignment was actually in Key West at the Naval Air Station. And as if service on one peninsula wasn't enough, the Army sent me shortly after that to Korea. So I've served in two different peninsulas, right? Not only Florida, but also one on the other side of the planet. So that was kind of interesting. But after I got out of the Army, I went on to graduate school, and like you said, taught college for 17 years, 13 of those at UCF, and most of my research interests were about international relations, national security, military institutions, and a host of things like that. And some of my research even involved like the role of veterans in civil rights efforts, not only in the United States, but in other countries as well. And just kind of looking at some things that kind of tended to be related to those kinds of processes. But yeah, I mean, Veterans Day is obviously very important because, if I remember right, the numbers are like less than 1% of the country serves in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say, you know, if we're just kind of sharing thoughts, I frankly think we as a country would be much better if we had a system of national service that incorporated not only military options, but also civilian options, but if it included military options as well, because we don't have many institutions in which people from various walks of life and background really rub shoulders and live and work next to each other on a regular basis, right? It's too easy for people to get siloed off into either, you know, rural urban divides or racial divides or socioeconomic divides. And, you know, we see that not only because we don't have mandatory military service, but even there's a certain amount of differentiation and segregation based on where people live and the kinds of jobs they have. And just since it is Veterans Day, I thought I'd just raise that as something that I've had on my mind, because I think we as a country, especially given we hear talk about political polarization, and it's easy for that polarization to take place when people aren't rubbing shoulders with one another and doing the hard work of actually kind of living and existing. And it's easy for people, you know, on social media to tell us what other people think and feel, and for people to kind of absorb that. So I'll step off my soapbox for a minute, but.
Well, Paul, you know, you've touched on a few points that I wanted to basically reference as well. One of the most important, what I've observed with all of my relationships with veterans, and I just want to thank you all for your friendship and your leadership. There is almost an association, an integration. There is no separation, in my opinion. I guess it's because of when you're on the battlefield, you're protecting each other. I've come to understand that there is just this unity of inclusion. There is no boundaries, in my opinion, what I've experienced. And to your point, there's a discipline. Before the show started this morning, I was speaking to my producer and I was saying to him, just the courtesies, the proper decency, how you address others from the military experience. You know, many of us, and it's interesting to touch on that point, my brother. I believe too that there needs to be most of us who are immigrants, do have an experience of being uniformed in schools. And I believe even just wearing a uniform created that level of discipline and you know, that responsibility that came from just wearing a clean uniform. So I'm with you that there's some things we could address, some kind of social contribution, some kind of civic responsibility with some incentive to keep us going. I know, like you talk all the time, Paul, it was to pay for your tuition. I know other people have other incentives, but I just want to say today, we're going to touch on a few other things, but thank you each again for your service. You know what, while 2 years ago, while I was touring the state, I also know, Gertie, from where you stand, that there are only 7 VA hospitals in the state of Florida.
Right.
And I'm quite familiar too, because one of the challenges the VA hospital in Central Florida was facing is transportation. There were so many things needed to be done. You have to be scheduled for appointments. Some people, and I know you all have a great healthcare system. I know that the PAC Act did more than other services have provided. But I also know that there is a need for so many folks who are without transportation and the scheduling to hospitals. I also wanted to talk to you about another option that we could, you know, when hopefully we have the listening ears of this incoming administration, because things needed to expound, right, and to have an evolution. But do you believe that just as how we have the services, do we have enough community hospitals that accept our VA services? Do you think that would be a solution? Do you think? Talk to me, Gertie.
Yes. So actually, that's a very good point. I wanted to actually address one of the things that the first speaker had spoken about the national military. So unfortunately, because I have to be brutally honest, I am not for that, because I feel like depending on which administration is in office, it may negatively impact poor Black and brown folks more. if we put a mandatory nationalization of joining the military. Those are the areas that people will probably go more into to try to recruit. And then if people are forced to go into the military in that sense, then that kumbaya moment that we have, that loving our country and loving each other, that may not be something that is experienced if we are forced to only give them that option. So that's why I don't, when you were saying that, I was like, sounds like a good idea, but I can see marginalized communities being more impacted negatively.
More impacted. Gertie, we're going to have to pause for a minute. You know, we got to pay the bills here for commercial.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We're going to come back to that topic of mandatory vets, you know, where we went through prior to wars, where you had to, you know how that goes, enlist. Talk to you soon after this break.
St. Kitts and Nevis is shifting away from its heavy reliance of its Citizenship by Investment program, which has long been a key revenue source for the nation. Prime Minister Dr. Terrence Drew recently introduced the Sustainable Island State Agenda, a new development strategy aimed at diversifying the economy and reducing dependence on CBI funds. Dr. Drew highlighted that while CBI contributed to over $2.5 billion from 2019 to 2023, its revenue is inconsistent and under pressure from international entities such as the United Kingdom and the European Union, who are reevaluating the visa-free privileges tied to the country's passport. To promote lasting economic growth, the government will use existing CBI funds to support permanent job creation and local opportunities. The Sustainable Island State Agenda, which spans the next 15 years, is structured around the sustainable economic expansion and diversification pillars. Over the coming years, the agenda is expected to drive significant growth in sectors like construction, tourism, agriculture, and sustainability. Among the new projects are a new Bastiere High School funded by CBI, the JNF Climate Smart General Hospital supported by Taiwan, a desalination plant, and an expanded power plant funded by Saudi Arabia. Dr. Drew emphasized the importance of this shift and urged citizens to embrace the plan as a pathway towards a more resilient economy.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, rtv.network.
The voice of Florida. Your voice is our choice with Dr. Karen Green.
Wow, c'est choix nous.
Welcome back to our third segment in our program of our Veteran Day special feature here on The Voice of Florida. We are honored to have our special guests, President Danny Fusqua for the States Caucus, John Perry, an advocate for health and insurance, having served at NASA, Professor Paul Vasquez, our sister Esgorda is still here, who serves in the healthcare facility and in healthcare as an advocate. She left the call, but she touched on a good point before we left. I mean, I know she's serving, heading to work, possibly, or getting off. She touched on a point about, having the freedom to enlist. You're there, Gertie. Yeah, thank you for coming back. So we're going to spend a minute on that before we move into another subject. But I know that was something that you wanted to explain. You didn't see it as beneficial because it took away the freedom of choice to serve. Are you there, Gertie? You're muted. Okay, so we'll continue on that.
Back on that one.
Yes, are you there? Go ahead. Who was speaking? Is that
John
you?
Perry.
Yes, go ahead, John.
I happen to support
I'm
that
back.
effort.
I'm back.
Okay.
I have always believe that if you want to call it forced enlistment, if that's what you want to call it, this country offers so much, and I think it's the obligation of every individual to not only bear arms, but also understand that freedom is not free. And I think if we had more people enlisted, if we had more advocates out here that have served, you know, it kind of bothers me even right now. We are going to be having a commander-in-chief that has never served. His family never even came close to serving. He tries to emulate some of these great leaders that are around the world, Putin as being one. He doesn't understand that these great people, leaders, came from the military. They understand the importance of a strong military. I do advocate more and more citizens going in.
Right.
Can I possibly jump in?
Yes, please, Paul.
So I would just say I appreciate the criticism that Miss Remy raised, because I mean I think it's a useful one. And in fact, my thoughts are about when we talk about national service, military being kind of a component, but there are a lot of other components too that I think people should be allowed to serve in. Like there's certainly environmental needs that the country has. There are needs in the educational sector, needs in the healthcare sector. And I think when most people talk about national service nowadays, they do talk about it in more kind of a giving people options. But I think, and even in those aspects, even if it's not everybody serving in the military, that alone, even if it's in a different context, like in an educational or environmental or, you know, just urban renewal kind of context, would bring people together in a way that we haven't seen. And I would just go a little bit farther to say that, you know, to her point, like part of the problem we had during the Vietnam War was there were programs in place, like there was a special program called Project 100,000 that a lot of people probably don't remember, but it brought people into the military. And the idea behind it originally was based on the best of intentions by going back to people like John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson and Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan before he was a senator, because they thought the military offered people discipline and skills and could be beneficial socioeconomically. But unfortunately, once people started getting tracked. Sorry, can you hear me? It sounded like there was a
we can hear you.
Yeah. There was a problem with once people got tracked into specific MOSs, and a disproportionate number of African Americans ended up serving in combat roles, and that contributed in like some of the concerns Dr. King raised about disproportionate numbers of African Americans dying in combat. So just all that's to say is I take the point she raised, and I think there are ways one could think about national service that don't fall as victim to maybe some of her concerns. And just the other point I would raise is when you think about the number of people, the idea that we don't need a military in the United States that would encompass, you know, a cohort of everybody who say is turning 18 or turning 20 or whatever. That would just be too large. But certainly there are all kinds of needs across the country for like just more citizen-oriented public service.
Okay, I hear you. President Danny, what's your thought on this?
Well, I have to agree with what everybody is saying, because I really do believe that.
Alert from device warming.
My apology. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I have to agree, because I feel that we need more enlisted to serve, and also we need more to serve in other capacities other than the military, is to continue to give back to this great United States of America. We will forever always make sure that the United States of America is a great country to live in, but it's all hands on deck to contribute to our United States of America, to improve and make sure that we have a quality of life across the board. And it's with everybody giving in and doing your part.
One of the things that I've recognized, my brother, is that the immigrant community, if you think of the U.S. military, the benefits, you know, there was also an opportunity for naturalization and one becoming a resident, a legal resident at some point during the different stages during the Vietnam War and other wars. But at this point, we also need to see that this great nation, the strongest military in the world, comprises, I was looking at the statistic, it's almost 50% of immigrants. And to your point, you know, we're talking about a new incoming president who is anti-immigration, anti-immigrants, with a naturalism start of a profile. And here is where my concern is. And I wanted to just, you know, this program, we get to speak your mind, speak free. We use the Constitution of our First Amendment. And this show, the title of it being, the program is Use the Voice of Florida, where your voice is your choice. We want to just say that anything you say here is what is said from your own conviction. Nobody, you're here in your own capacity. I'm saying today that we have an ingoing president who is looking at a worldview of naturalism and trying to separate us. It's not that he is, I don't believe he could be against immigrants when all his wives were immigrants, but I do believe that it has to do with what we know to be factual. There are people he surrounded himself with. There is a racist piece of this agenda. And the bottom line, as you have said, people who were disenfranchised going into Vietnam, Muhammad Ali did not go, but he protested his own way because what we saw as a wars that were just, you know, for different reasons. But on this point, folks, we will continue to recognize that America has the greatest military. We will continue to see that the people who've been trained, people who have gone through the military, I believe their characters. It has been my understanding that there's a discipline that comes from that experience. There is a genuine love, forthrightness, no nonsense, sincerity that I've experienced with each of you on this call. You know, there's so much modesty. First of all, let me give you some credits around here before we have to wrap up and go into personal closing notes. The voice of Florida happens to be the voice of John Perry. Thank you. When you hear the commercial going, it is John Perry's voice, the voice of Florida. The linguistics we have on this call, because I try to make it reflective of the state of Florida. We do have folks, you hear the other languages that are spoken here in the state. I also want to modestly recognize Dr. Paul Vasquez as being a congressional advisor too on policies. His humility doesn't put him there, but he served in that capacity too. Having looked at even preceding the war, or when the war just started in Ukraine, he actually took the time to speak to transferring professors on the topic where peace and support could lie. And thank you again for that involvement, Dr. Vasquez. My sister Gertie, I'm going around the line because I know where you've been. You've looked at municipal races, making sure that you run with your voice. You have stood up for the freedom of women in healthcare.
Yes.
And you've also been there for the students with literacy in the state of Florida for the freedom of education. President Danny Fusqua, let me just touch you. One of the things that I know you're working on now is your passion being in aviation, that I think you chair the Black Aviation Pilots, I think it is, where you're mentoring young Black men to get into aviation. My brother, I couldn't be more blessed today. Our audience couldn't be more blessed. And another thing about that, here's where we know that there's a real benefit to our people in uniform and service. I don't know, and you can tell me all. I'll ask you in 30 seconds each person. Why is it your faith is so important to you? Because each of you on this call, I know, are believers in faith, and that you believe in a godliness that supports you. And I'll start with ladies first. Gertie, what is it that keeps you grounded in your faith?
Well, throughout my faith, I know that I can't do anything without God and Jesus Christ. However, I also know that I got my faith through growing up. As a Haitian American, having Jamaican families, it has always been around me. However, my faith was not weaponized when I was younger to destroy other people, especially people that look like me, or to destroy immigrants by white supremacy. So my faith, when I got it out of love. So I can only see Christ and God as love. So I carry my faith through my activism because I want to spread the love, the joy, feeding people, whether through words or whether through actions. My faith does not teach me how to hate. So when I see that my faith is being weaponized to destroy the LGBTQIA community, to destroy women, to destroy Black and brown folks, to destroy poor white folks, and to destroy military folks, I get more upset and then more energized to put my faith out there to say, no, you're not reading from the same book that I read from. And I'm going to defend my faith and still carry it, because although people say don't talk politics with faith, that is a lie. Our faith is what brings us into politics. The only reason why I know people are being treated wrong in politics is because my Bible tells me how people should be treated right.
Wow.
And
Thank
so
you so much,
faith,
Shirley. That's
yeah,
that's a sermon we're going to have to take up in church one of these days with your sister. My brother Paul Vasquez, I know your faith is a foundation of yours too. What is it that gets you to keep your faith, Paul?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just an understanding that Christ's message was a message of love and compassion and mercy. And I believe that to my core. And I believe it's important that we not only think that in the abstract sense, but that we actually, take up our cross and try to improve the lot of others who are marginalized and oppressed and frankly, in many cases, the victims of injustice. And, the St. Augustine said you should pray as if everything depends on God, and then work as if everything depends on you. And there's a place for thoughts and prayers. That's an important component of I think a faithful person in the political sphere. But it doesn't end with thoughts and prayers. And frankly, when many of my thoughts and prayers are for leaders and to try to support leaders who have the conviction to do what's right and to do what's in keeping with the gospel.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much for that. Brother John Perry, talk to me, because I know where your faith has you too. We're going to be going in a few minutes. Let's make this 30 seconds each, please.
My sister, I thought I had the calling at 16. I was intuitive enough to say I did not want to belong to that fraternity because I was a product of the 70s in New York, and what I saw in so-called the church was not a part that I wanted to be. I took my message to the street. Church to me is your exemplification on a daily basis. What do you do? What does people see you do? And one of the things my mom used to always say, don't ask any questions, because if you live long enough, you'll find out for yourself. I found out that voice that's within you, that's God. So listen to it.
Thank you. Thank you, John. President Danny Frisqua, tell me what it is that keeps you going, not only as a man of God, as a preacher, but what is it that holds you with this conviction, even having served in the military?
I make it real quick within 30 seconds. When Jesus walked on earth, teaching and preaching, the example that he left for all of us. And for us today as faith believers, when we know that we have a calling on our life and we have been commissioned to do the work that God has called us to do, we should build our faith so strong and to stand and go out there and do the work that he has called and chosen us to do. And even with what we hear in the media and what we see what's coming down the pipeline, we have to stand. We have to build our faith so strong and do the work that we've been called to do, and make sure we do it with pride, and make sure what we do, that God is well pleased in the work that we do here on planet Earth.
Oh, blessings. Blessings. I couldn't have asked for a better closing. Ladies and gentlemen, I always close with a little summary. I want to thank you, each and every one of you who have served this great nation as veterans. My guests here on the show today, each of you, thank you, thank you, thank you from all of us, from all the viewers across the world who are watching this program today here on Veterans Day. Thank you for having served and stood there to protect this great nation. Viewers, again, here we are on this program. I will stay with all of you before we wind down. We just want to thank you for all tuning in this week to The Voice of Florida, where I mentioned your voice is our choice. Here on the show, we get to speak from our hearts, from our thoughts, and with the openness of knowing that this is what is needed. Here in the state of Florida, we have a few things up against us. We know what's coming. We've heard the war cries. We've heard where we could very well be seen as militarized. The proposals have been made. But we're going to continue to pray for these United States We're going to continue to apply our faith that our military will not be turned as weapons against each of us. That the training you all had in the military will come to remind us, because of your faith and the discipline you have, that you need to protect each other and your families. So today, while we're here, in closing today's broadcast, I just want to say to the world, we know where we've been. We were hopeful that things would have been different. But we do know as believers that God has always had a time to free his people. That there was always an example of a strong, wanting to be ruler king. And we know that there's always a liberation and strong people within that process. Today, in closing, I want to say again, thank you, guests, for being here. We will continue to fight. We will continue to fight for freedom, democracy, for upholding goodness, goodwill, and continue to love and pray for this great nation. Thank you for tuning in this week to The Voice of Florida. We look forward to seeing you again, and God bless you all. Thank you.
God bless you. Thanks.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network. Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.